All right. Hello and good afternoon. It is Monday, November 4th, and I am Rob, aka that developer dad, as you can see right up there. And we're building .NET apps. I have an application that I want to start letting people sign up for. Now, before I do that, the application that I've built, I call it the DM's Familiar. That's the branding that it's going to have. It's currently hosted in Azure under their free plans, including a free plan for the Azure SQL Database, which I've been using for my storage stuff of the NPCs that my users will create, a little bit of user information, stuff like that. And one of the things that I've noticed is that when the database goes to sleep, it takes sometimes as much as a minute and sometimes even more than that to wake back up again. Now, that isn't a very great user experience. Not at all. And I've looked at what it's going to cost me to run even just a very tiny Azure SQL database 24/7, so that delay doesn't negatively impact my users. Because putting myself in their shoes, if I had to wait up to a minute for the application to start acting, I'd be pretty put out. I don't have a lot of patience as an end user. So because of that, I've got the privilege of being able to very easily step into my users' shoes. And if I can build out something so that it works well enough for me to not get mad at or pissed off about, then chances are it's going to be good enough for other people as well. Because I am horribly impatient when it comes to my technology. So what I've started doing, I did some tire kicking a week or two ago about around using Azure Table Storage for the application entities. And I've done a little bit more work. I've got what I believe to be a usable NPC table entity already modeled in a secondary ResourceAccess component. Now, before we dive into the details here, this morning, or in the prior stream, I did a lot of work around having flexibility of component implementations. And I also talked about having an abstraction assembly for each component, as well as an implementation assembly. And here you can see that I've got the gametools.npc access. This is my abstractions. And then I've also got the npc access.sql server and the npc access.azure table right here. And the Azure tables hasn't got a whole lot of code in it yet, but we do have our Azure SQL server. It's up and running. Now, before I launch this thing, I do want to give, and I'll just recycle this X window. Let's pull this off to my other screen real quick while I log into the Azure portal. Here we go. Log in as me. And just before I hit run on the application over there, I am going to, let's go into GM tool data. And I kind of want to give that a little goose to get it running, because right now it's in a paused state. So I'm just going to hit the query editor real quick and continue as me. Just using Entra authentication, and this is going to take a minute or two to spin up for me. And I am also going to just run this from code over here on the on my Windows laptop that I'm remoted into. And the database is currently resuming. And this is spinning up, it's doing its things. I'll sign in real quick. And go. I'm logging in. Here's that. And the database says it's online, so I should theoretically be able to load this up, and there we go. That wasn't too bad because I pre-warmed up the database for me. And we can see that it's able to access all of these characters. So we'll go back to the list, and that's pretty handy. So what I want to do is I want to take all of this character data access stuff, and I want to move that out of SQL Server and into Azure Table Storage. So going back to the Azure portal over on my other monitor, I'm going to take a look at my tables. And I've got a table called user objects. So I want to go to the storage browser actually. Why do I have 9 tables with 1,000 entities in them? That's a little bit bonkers. There shouldn't be that many. Let's come back to the storage. User objects. Here's this. Okay, and here's the one thing that we have in there. Now, I'm very curious about what all of these tables are. It's just that one. Okay. Data management. Application, I don't have anything coming in. So that's a really interesting question. A very interesting question is why I've got all of this stuff. Like 1.09K entities. I want to see what I've got. Nah, not that worried. So over in the user objects, that's the table I am using. So let's take a look at azure.data.tables. Here's my table entity. Start looking at the code. And this is the NPC access Azure table provider. You can see it implements INPC access. All good. We're going to need this table service client up here as my storage client. And we're just going to go ahead and let's unpin this so that we've got maximum stuff, maximum space. And we're just going to do that. All right, now to filter the NPCs, we are going to need to, well, we're going to need to create a table client. So var user objects client equals a new table client. But that's not how we do it. We're going to go storage client dot And I don't remember the syntax for this, but that's okay. We've got Copilot here. So let's go back to the start of this line. First, we obtain a table client from the table service client. The table we want is called user objects. User objects is partitioned on a key built from object kind underscore user ID. So, var user objects equals user object client equals, golly, you running Copilot, equals storage client dot get table client for user objects. Var NPC entities equals user object client dot query async, and we want NPC table entity. We need our using statement in there to get pointed at that. And it's a type, which is not valid. So that's a silly thing. And we need to pass a filter, max per page, IEnumerable select is null, blah, 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 blah. So our filter is going to be darn keyboard shortcuts, string, partition key equals, now NPC table entity, I am going to set a public const string and I'm going to call it partition key prefix equals NPCs. string. Now, I was going to pull that out into a method, but I don't need it just yet. So I need npc table entity dot partition key prefix underscore filter dot user ID. And let's query the table for all entities that match the partition key. Save. And we're just going to put an await on this. Which means this needs to become an async task. Here we go. Does not contain a definition for getAwaiter. Async pageable, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Is Copilot going to give us any goodies? Nope, it's not. That's okay. We'll figure it out. So, Mr. Copilot. How do I filter the query against the Azure Table Storage client to return all items under the partition key? Okay, blah, 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 blah. Let's pin this. And I actually want to add this to the context. Is there a way to add this to the GitHub context? Cloud table client, table query, partition key, execute the query, handle the results. Okay, so, excuse me. GitHub Copilot, open chat window, learn more settings. I actually want to add references. Okay, so using that one, can you show me the same code but adapted to the, what's the name of this thing? Filter NPCs. Filter NPCs method on the NPC access Azure Table Provider. And let's pull this so it's a little bit wider. Okay. Filter NPCs. So we've got the connection string just like we need it to be up here. Our storage client, we're good. User object client, storage client.get table client. And do we have left and right here? Where's our scroll bar? User objects. And yep, that's the correct thing. Let's go out to the end of the line. Good. So NPC table entity, partition key prefix, filter.user ID. And then I will say, whoops, let's come over here. And where are you? So here it's just setting up a lambda expression. On that partition key. So query async. And let's unpin that just for a moment because I grok what it was saying there. So user object client.query async. I'm going to bring this down here to the next line. Give myself some white space and say E for entity, E dot partition key equals partition key. All right, good enough. Now, let's take another look at what it told me over here. Hey, what's up, C Films? Doing okay, man. So, next thing I got to do is we got the partition key construction. We've got the query execution. We're running a query async. And that's going to bring us back an async IEnumerable, basically. And so we're not going to bother collecting those into an NPC table entity and then from there into our NPC access filter result. So like right here in the suggested solution, it's actually running two loops. One of them materializes the entities in the query results into NPC entities, and then the next turns those NPC entities into filter results. So I'm going to try and skip this double loop here because it's not necessary. And instead, I am going to await for each var NPC entity in NPC entities and var, actually, we want to return NPC access filter results, NPC access filter result, equals a new and ID equals NPC entity dot. Now here's a gotcha. Oh, no, maybe not. NPC ID. This may or may not work. Name equals NPC entity dot. Is there a name? Excuse me. Come on, not vocation name, character name. Species is species name. Vocation is vocation name. Now, this isn't going to do us any good at all unless we're setting all of this stuff up. So, op result of enumerable NPC access filter result op result equals new list of NPC access filter result filter result equals new. Down at the bottom, I'm gonna say op result dot payload equals filter result. I don't want to fall afoul of any null checks. This needs to become filter results. And I go filter results dot add filter result. And finally, I got to wrap almost all of this in a try catch. So I'm going to say try. Put down here, cut, paste, catch, exception EX, and GUID error ID equals GUID.new GUID string error message equals, gotta spell string right, ex.message op result.add error. And then down here we get rid of this throw new not implemented and return op result. Save. All right. And this should give us a filtered list of NPCs for a given, find the object. Yes. Find the object. This should give us a list of the filtered NPCs in our table storage instance. And I actually want to test this, but I don't want to test it with a by deploying the whole darn thing and all of that stuff. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pin this down here, and I've got tests. Nah, I'm just going to add it here, just as a temporary. So we're going to say add new project, and it's just going to be a console app. Say next. Source table storage test. Next. Yeah. We're not going to use top level, any of that stuff. C-Films, were you asking me if Azure Table Storage is the equivalent to like a NoSQL type database? A couple of weeks ago when I first started yammering on about it. The answer turns out yes. It's functionally equivalent to a NoSQL database. So I need to add a project reference to NPC access, that's our abstractions, and our Azure tables. Okay. Now, that's SQL Server. Here's Azure Tables. Yeah, it's functionally equivalent to a NoSQL type kind of thing. So, static NPC access, create NPC table provider, NPC access service equals new NPC access Azure table provider. It's going to need a connection string. So while I get that set up, well, here's what I'm going to do. So we're going to go static configuration. No, stop. Configuration. I need to pull this in. Use local version. Load config. I will also need .NET Env. So I need to manage my NuGets. And actually I can do this via manage NuGet for solution. And let's go to installed env. Here we go. That should be on the UI, the game tools, and table storage test. Install. Yeah. That's fine. I am also going to need, on the installed side of things, Microsoft.extensions. Where are we? Configuration abstractions, logging Azure App Services, logging console, all this goo, system text JSON, all that rubbish. Okay, not that worried. Okay. So create NPC table provider. What are you complaining about? All right. This is going to need to accept an configuration. Config. And var cn equals config just going to call it table storage constring. And I'll say .env. .env. Come on, what you doing? Dot environment dot load. Here's that. Add a new item. It's just going to be a text file. Called .env. Add that. Table storage constring. We'll go here, equals, and SQL storage constring equals. And what I'm going to do for now, just for testing the spin up and testing that I can read the environment variables, fake connection string for Azure Table Storage, fake connection string for SQL. Save that. Program CS, here's that. And I'm going to pass the connection string into my table storage. env.load. I'm going to get rid of the namespace reference and replace that with a using. There's that. Here's this. It's going to want me to import environment variables here. So that's another NuGet package. We're going to browse. It's going to be configuration.environment. Here we go. Install that bad boy. Okay, so that's all fixed. And we're going to return the config. Return service. And npc access table storage equals create npc table storage provider var config equals load config, pass the config. There we go. Var npcs equals table storage dot filter npcs, and I need to pass an npc filter. Which means I need to build the npc filter. npc filter equals new npc access filter. And instead of doing it this way, equals new user ID equals, I'm just going to plug that in here in a second. And can I, here's my storage browser, tables, user objects, let me edit. Switch. No, don't want to use that. That's crazy talk. I don't want to do full on. I just want to grab this. Edit. Grab this, copy. Yeah, paste. That's fine. That's not exactly super secret, top secret information there. Okay, now I just want to spin this up to see if it'll execute. I don't expect to be able to successfully filter NPCs on my super FACO connection string. That's going to vomit all over the place. But I at least want to make sure that this little test app will spin up and succeed up to, but not including this line of code. So, debug, start new instance. All right, we'll make sure load config works. We should have a whole bunch of stuff in config, like 65 frickin' sections. And we do. So we can step over. Our config is still real. Connection string is null. So something freaked out. So let's stop. And we'll come back out to Program CS. Run down here. And config table storage con st. That's that. And I'm probably doing something wrong here. So let's run. And we're going to do some hacking in the immediate window in a second. No, that's not what I wanted. You doofus. I want this. Debug, start new. So here's load config. We've got this. We'll step in here. And that's coming out as null. That's okay. So config dot. I want to print config. Dot. I guess it'll be get section. And table storage con string. Darn muscle memory, man. Dot value. So that's null. Const. I'm using the correct thing. How about config dot get children? C dot key table storage const. Okay, so get children doesn't give me what I want either. So config sections. These are all using the environment variables configuration provider. So that's good. Session name, user domain, all this stuff. What am I doing in here that is different from the way I did it elsewhere? Configuration builder.build. Let's open up the SAS admin because I've got it working over here. And I probably did something stupid and goofy. So there's that. Let's take a look at program CS. Load system configuration. Go to definition. New configuration builder.add environment variables, and then we do a builder.build. Let's do this. Copy. Paste. Okay. Save. Now, what if I do it this way? If I go Azure Table Storage as the section, connection string, and SQL as a section name, as a connection string. Back out to program and say var config section equals config dot get required section ATS and string constring equals config section. What did I name it over here? Connection string. I am in the process of switching databases. I'm actually in the process of switching from a database to an Azure storage account. like just Azure Table Storage. So let's try spinning this now. Start new instance. Nope. Okay, where are my build errors? I goofed something up. The name CN. Okay, yeah. CN. There's that. Save. Debug. Start new. All right, so we'll step overload config, pop in here. A storage account. It's a different kind of section ATS not found in configuration. So for some reason, the .env file isn't getting loaded. So a storage account, instead of say SQL Database or in your case MariaDB or Postgres SQL, instead of like a formalized database service that you would stand up in Azure, a storage account is just, it's an account meant to store nearly raw data. And there's a number of different kinds. Like you've got blob storage, I'm sure you've interacted with that. There's file storage, Azure Q storage, and Azure Table Storage. And what Azure Table Storage basically is each table represents a collection of things. And it's a more NoSQL style whatchamacallit. So I'm going to take like a 2-minute step away. When I come back, I'm going to troubleshoot what the heck is going on with my silly little .env file here. I'll be right back. Oh, I think I know exactly what's going on, but I'll fix that in a moment. All right, I know exactly what I'm doing wrong here because that .env file, which holds all of my environment variables, or the custom environment variables, it doesn't get copied to the output directory by default. So we have to come in here to the properties on that file in our project and set that to copy to output directory, and I just say copy if newer. And that should cover us. So let's try spinning this up again. Start new instance. And we're just going to bounce over that. I want to step in here. Do we have a config section now? We do. And we should be able to say the connection string is now fake connection string for ATS. Beautiful. So what I need to do now is update these values. And I'm going to update them off screen and then close my .env file because I don't want to share this information with y'all. So bear with me for just a second while I do this. I'm going to go back to single cam and I'm going to open up code. And where is Azure Table Experiment? Open this in VS Code. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. Open in VS Code. Come on, where is it? Here it is. And these are actually sensitive values, so I don't want to share them just yet. Well, ever. Okay, so the connection string is here. And I believe, actually, where's the Azure portal? There we go. Let's go to the overview. Monitoring capabilities, tools, and SDKs. Where are my connection strings? Storage browser. Settings, maybe? Configuration. Endpoints. Table service. It's my resource ID. Where the heck do I get my nope, that's not what I want. Under data storage, containers, file shares, tables, URL. Nope. And let's see. Access control. Overview. Capabilities. Nope. Tutorials, tools, and SDK. Come on, Rob. Where did you find it before? Properties. I'm going to just grab the connection string from this code I have over here. Copy that. Paste that. And hope it's current. Human Tools app data. Yeah, seems to be about right. And then while I'm at it, while I'm off screen here, I'm going to come into the UI, Blazor client, app settings JSON, app settings development. Let's grab this. Copy that. And drop this in here. Paste that. Oh, Rob, you goon. Okay. Save. And close that. Now, if I'm looking at my storage browser, I come into tables in here, pull this back over here. Go back to my screen share. Here we go. We should see this entity that I've added a week or so ago in my Azure Table Storage. And we've got a partition key, a row key, a timestamp. You can see that I added this like on the 24th, so about a week and a half ago. And then, of course, here's all the data stuff that comes from what I had built over on the SQL side of things. And the user ID I need to use is actually this value. There we go. So I'm going to grab this and pull it over here. And in my program, when I'm building my filter, I need to put that value in here. Very good. Save all this stuff. Now, for partition keys, we actually need to cleanse that user ID a little bit, because partition keys get really, really grumpy when they contain dashes and stuff like that. So string user ID key value equals filter.userid.replace. We're going to replace all the dashes with empty strings. And drop user ID key value in there. So save. And now we should be able to try and query that table. So we know our config is loading correctly. We've got our NPC filter building. And we can come in here and do this stuff. Excuse me. So let's pull this out like so. Run down here, debug, start new instance. NPC access service equals new one of those. I'm not going to hover over the CN so that you don't see it. We're going to instantiate it. Step. Build our NPC filter. And let's step in to our table storage access filter. So we'll build out the op result. Filter results is a new collection of NPC access filter results. Let's get our user object client. Cleanse the user ID key value. Build our partition key. And now run our query in an async fashion. Boop. Now we'll await for each NPC entity and NPC entities. And it's trying. What's it doing? Did I screw something up? Probably. I have a feeling that it threw up all over the place. Exited with code 0. Okay. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Out here in program, I need to drop an await on there. Console dot write line string, we have NPCs and NPCs dot count. Oh, This is an op result. Dot payload. Save. And console needs a capital C. And I got to come out to the end of this line and give it a semicolon. Save. Let's try debugging again. Debug, start new. All right, we got that. We'll go hop. Matter of fact, I'll just get rid of that breakpoint right now. Step out, build the filter. We do the query async. Aha. And NPC ID. What is the value? Ah, the row key, for some reason on this guy, is a GUID. And we're actually using the row key out here. So I think instead of this, construct right here, I'm going to just do a get and set. Save. Try it again. Debug, start new instance. Come out here, we await table storage, filter NPCs. Let's step in. Set up the return objects. Now, NPC ID is 2. Character name is Gareth Stone. He's a human. Night. Step. Add them to the filter results. Set the payload on op result. Return that. Come back out to our console. We have an op results. Our payload is that guy. And if we look out here, we have one NPC. Thing of beauty. So we've just accessed our table storage quite nicely. Now, where do we go from here? Well, offline, because I want to get this stuff implemented, and I really want to try and get the private beta rolling within the net, like either this week or by the end of next week at the absolute latest. I'm going to finish implementing the NPC table storage provider offline, and we're going to talk about what I did and review that code tomorrow morning in the next session or the next video. And I'm sure I'm going to run into some gotchas, and I'm going to try and be mindful to keep notes about those gotchas as I encounter them so that I can talk to them and call them out and so on and so forth. And then I'm going to use the re-implemented table storage provider to actually write a little console utility that's going to pull everything out of SQL, reformat it for table storage as necessary, and write it over to the table storage provider. So I won't lose any of my any of the objects that I've already created in the SQL database. And I'm sure I could do something like with Azure Data Factory or something like that, but I want to actually use that as a test harness for my different resource access component implementations. So I'm going to need to do that for MPC access. I'm also going to need to do it for metered usage. And is there anything else that uses SQL? I don't see it. Not yet, anyway. Ah, cool. I've got a couple interesting repositories over there, CFilms. The components underscore rules utility is one that I'm particularly interested in seeing people kick the tires on, because I'm going to be using that a lot as I build out the admin system. And I've also got some possible uses, at least for the rules utility, in mind for extending the capabilities of the DM's familiar after it's live and I'm adding new features to it. So we'll see how that shapes up. But yeah, there's several active repositories over there right now, and yeah. All right, I am going to call it a day on the live streaming and the video creation. I'm going to get this table provider finished up and tested, and maybe even use it to migrate the NPCs from SQL to table storage. And there's a few other questions that I want answered that I brought to mind while I streamed this afternoon. So yeah, thanks for joining me, C. We'll see you next time, buddy. And to the rest of you, have a great evening. Happy coding. Take care, folks.